The federal election campaign about to enter its third week, and President Trump's latest round of tariffs is putting pressure on the Canadian economy and Canadian jobs. And now, in addition to those tariffs on foreign-made vehicles, the U.S. is set to more than double the duty on softwood lumber imports from Canada. Vic Fedeli is Ontario's Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, and he joins me live this morning. Nice to see you, Minister.
Good morning, Rosie.
I want to start with the auto sector because obviously that is top of mind for you and for people in Ontario. Canada didn't get the broad reciprocal tariffs, but did get hit with 25% on all foreign-made vehicles. We've already seen some pause in work at the Stellantis plant. Your boss, Premier Ford, called this the best of a bad deal. How prepared was the province for this kind of move to hit the auto sector directly?
Well, I think we're cautiously optimistic, and it all comes down to relationships. I think Premier Ford has been down in Washington. Our teams have been down in Washington. We continue to have these discussions and really show them that our auto sectors are so interlinked that I think we were successful in getting the pause that we saw. We weren't on those famous charts that President Trump put up. And so, we're not going to stop until we get to zero. But, we continue. It's really about these relationships that we're building.
Well, and I want to ask you about that because you're going down to Washington, but there are reports that GM is set to increase truck production in Indiana in response to Trump's tariffs, which would seem, I think you would agree, Minister, to be sort of the desired effect from the president. Does that worry you that there are companies that are starting to already shift production or increase production in parts of the United States?
Well, of course, it's always a concern because we continue to bid, but let's not lose track of a couple things that happened this week that really got lost in the radar. In Windsor, look, the fact that their Stellantis plant is shutting down for a couple of weeks, it's terrible news. But on the same day, Friday, a company from Taiwan, Mint, made a $300 million auto investment in Windsor and are about to hire 1,100 people. Only on Monday, I was in Germany with Siemens. They've announced a $150 million investment into Oakville. So there is a lot of good news. Both the Premier and I will be in another community in Ontario this coming Friday with a very major announcement. So, we will continue our work in bringing these businesses because we've got such a great model in Ontario that the businesses are attracted to.
Yeah, I mean, but that's to your point, though. That is about diversifying trade and trying to find other countries beyond the United States. Is there a way to make up for any potential job losses in the U.S.-Canada auto sector by bringing in those other businesses in other countries?
Well, if you look over the last year, we don't have the 24 statistics, but in 23, we had 137 companies from around the world land in Ontario, bring $11 billion worth of investments and hire 12,200 people. Mm-hmm. So that is something that we have been working on for a long time. Since we got elected, our trade with India, our outgoing trade with India is up more than 50%. So we've been working on expanding overseas trade. And you're going to see in a couple of weeks what we're going to be doing about interprovincial trade. It's actually very, very massive what we'll be doing and should be creating a great GDP for the country.
Okay, well, let's talk about your trip to Washington later today. Who do you talk to and what can you say to them to convince them that the integration of the auto sector specifically cannot and should not be undone? What kind of meetings are you going to have to try and get that message through?
Yeah, again, it's always about relationships. So we'll be meeting with U.S. trade reps. We'll be meeting with teams from the auto sector. Mm-hmm. We'll be meeting with elected officials, senators, members of Congress. And the message will be, look, we are fully integrated. You've seen the kind of problems that you have caused. Not just Stellantis in Windsor lost jobs, but 6 Stellantis plants in the U.S. are now shut down over these tariffs as well. But when you hear President Trump, so I'll be using these lines, I can tell you. When you hear President Trump saying we don't need anything from Canada, think about this, just a few stats. Nickel, 80% of all the nickel that's needed to make aircraft in the U.S. comes from Ontario. 56% of all the nickel the U.S. uses in their defense sector comes from Ontario. 85% of the potash comes from Saskatchewan, Western Canada. Aluminum, 60% of all their imports comes from Canada, most of it from Quebec. If the U.S. was at 100% of their aluminum capacity, they'd only make 16%. So you can't make, never mind pop cans or beer cans, you can't make engine blocks. Oil, 60% of their imports from out west. Lumber, the U.S. mills cannot meet their own demand. So when you hear, so this is the message I bring to these people, is when you hear presidents say you don't need anything from Canada, he's just flat out wrong.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned lumber because Premier Eby said that he's going to meet with the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, tomorrow to talk about this doubling of softwood lumber duties against Canada. Ontario obviously has a forestry sector too, 137,000 jobs, I think. How concerned are you about those duties and what would you like to see in terms of a response?
Well, it's the duties. This has been a long-standing battle since the 1980s. Every time the U.S. puts a tariff on, the monies that is collected is put in escrow. We take it to court. We win. We get the money back. Yeah. But it damages the sectors along the way. But thankfully, we're building here in Ontario and across the country. In Ontario, we plan on building 1.5 million houses in 10 years. We're going to need our lumber. By the way, our lumber is a really better grade of lumber. It grows in the cold and it just is a hardier type of lumber. This is really sought after by Americans.
What did you make of the response from the federal government last week to retaliate with a 25% tariffs on vehicles, but leave out parts? Was that the right response, do you think?
Well, I think it's a step in the right direction. Again, with us, with Premier Ford, you've seen him on U.S. On U.S. TV. Yeah. You've seen him in the U.S. He continues to bring this message that we've got to advance our supply chain together and not jeopardize it. And so he's been fighting for workers literally on both sides of the border. And his message, I think, really is solidly resonating. And you'll see, I'm sure you're going to see a lot more Premier Ford on U.S. TV screens because the message he brings really rings home with their families.
Well, if you want to tell him to come on this program, Minister, that would be great because we see him a lot on the U.S. networks, but I never get a chance to talk to him here.
He's talking to that U.S. audience, right?
I get it, for sure.
And he'll start to remind them now, hey, you lost $7 trillion in your market since Wednesday. So if you were looking at in the States 401k, your pension, and there's nothing there, you need to hear why, and you're not hearing it from the U.S. representatives or senators. You're hearing it from Premier Ford.
Just back to my question about the counter tariffs, though. Did you support that approach by the federal government?
Yeah, I think it's a measured approach. The people of Canada have always expected reciprocal tariffs. Yeah. They told us that last President Trump 1.10 or 1.0, I should say. So I think they were, something that was widely discussed. It's a step in the right direction. Because we were spared, if I can use that word correctly, in the auto sector, at least on the parts for a while, and our number is quite the same as high as other countries. I say that's all because of those relationships, because of Premier Ford being down in Washington and our teams working together. We're phone calls away. I'll be there this afternoon with our team. But it's not just the U.S. We're also we were in Germany last week, really building up strong relations. We've done fabulous work with Germany. We're in Japan, Korea after Easter. So it's a multifaceted approach. It's not just about the U.S.
Minister, thank you. You're always very generous with your time, and don't let my desire to speak to your boss mean anything that I don't want to talk to you. I definitely do.
Thank you, Rosemary.
Okay, safe travels. Thanks. Bye-bye.